A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This is chapter 15, continuation. Doomed. Charles Saint Evermond, known as Darnay, announced the prosecutor. Freed and retaken. Denounced as an enemy of the Republic. A nobleman, one of the family of tyrants that lived off the blood of the people. Who denounced the prisoner? The president of the tribunal asked the prosecutor. 3 people. Ernest Defarge, owner of the wine shop in Saint Antoine. Who else? Teresa Defarge, his wife. Who else? Alexandre Monet, a doctor. A great uproar filled the courtroom, and Dr. Monet, pale and trembling, slumped in his seat. Ernest Defarge was called to the witness box. He told of his youth serving Dr. Monet, and later of sheltering the doctor after his release from the Bastille. What did you do the day that the Bastille fell to the people? The president asked. I ordered a jailer to take me and a fellow citizen, who now sits on the jury, to 105 North Tower, where Dr. Monet had said he lived as a prisoner. In a hole in the chimney of the cell, behind a stone, I found this paper in Dr. Monet's handwriting. The president read the paper. I, Alexandre Monet, write this sad note secretly in my cell in the Bastille in December 1767. I will hide it in the chimney, hoping some pitying soul will find it after my death. I write it now, in the 10th year of my imprisonment, for there is no hope of my ever being freed, and I fear that I will soon lose my mind. But for now I have all my wits with me, and I swear that my story is the truth. On December the 22nd, 1757, I was walking near my house when a carriage drew up behind me, and a voice called out my name. 2 gentlemen, twin brothers as I later realized, stepped out. They were wrapped in cloaks and carrying weapons. They told me politely but firmly to enter the carriage, and since I was unarmed, I had to obey. I was driven to a house on a lonely country road, where I found a beautiful young woman with brain fever lying on a bed. To keep her from injuring herself in her ravings, her arms were tied to her sides with sashes and handkerchiefs that belonged to a gentleman's wardrobe. They bore the coat of arms of a noble family and the letter E. The patient kept shouting, "My husband, my father, my brother," and then counting up to 12 and saying, "Hush." Since I had left my medicine bag at home when I went for my walk that night, the brothers gave me some drugs with which to quiet the patient. "Does she have a husband, a father, and a brother?" I asked one of the twins. "A brother," he answered, "who is also a patient here for you to see." And he led me to a loft by the stable, where I found a handsome peasant boy, about 17 years old, lying in some hay. The boy was dying of a stab wound, and although he gritted his teeth in pain, he wouldn't let me examine the wound, but it was too late to save his life anyhow. "How did this happen?" I asked one of the twins, whom I shall call the younger. "A crazy young common dog," he spat. "A slave. He forced my brother to stab him." "These noblemen rob us, beat us, and kill us," gasped the boy, gathering his strength so he could tell his story before he died. "But we have our pride. Have you seen my sister, doctor?" "Yes," I answered. "She was a good girl. She was engaged to marry a nice young man, a tenant of these 2 noblemen. We were all tenants, almost slaves. They taxed us, forced us to work without pay, took our crops for their animals, and barely fed us enough to keep us alive. But even worse, they took our young woman for their own pleasure. Right after my sister got married, that man's twin brother ordered her husband to give her to him for a while. But my sister refused to go with him, and her husband refused to persuade her to do so. So that nobleman harassed her husband to a cart like an animal, and drove him over the estate day after day, beating him to keep him moving. When he was finally taken out of the harness one day at noon to look for something to eat, he sobbed 12 times, one for every stroke of the bell, then collapsed and died in my sister's arms. Then that man's brother took my sister away for his pleasure. When I told my father, it broke his heart. I immediately took my younger sister, for I have another, to a place beyond the reach of this man. Last night I tracked the older brother here and climbed in the window, sword in hand. He came at me with his whip, and my sister ran to us. I told her not to come near us until he was dead. I struck at him to make him draw his sword. Lift me up now, doctor, so that I can see this evil man. I raised him in my arms. He turned to the younger twin and said, Marquis, when the time comes that your crimes will be answered for, I call upon you and your brother, the last of your evil race, to answer for them. I mark this cross of blood upon both of you as a sign. The dying boy put his hand to his wound and with his bloody forefinger drew a cross in the air. Then his finger dropped. His body went limp, and I laid him down dead. When I returned home, I had to unburden myself of the terrible secret, and I decided to write to the minister at the king's court explaining what had happened. I had just finished the letter when a beautiful young lady, looking ill and very upset, came to my door. She said she was the wife of the Marquis de Saint-Evremond. I connected that name with the name by which the dying boy addressed one of the twin brothers, and with the initial E on the handkerchief. The lady had discovered her husband's part in the story I have just written down. She felt pity for the dead girl, and not only wanted to help her family, but also turned the anger of heaven away from the Evremond family, which was so hated by the people of France. She also wanted to reach the younger sister, but I could not tell her the girl's name or address, for the wounded boy never revealed it before he died. The lady had a pretty child with her, a boy about 2 or 3 years old. For his sake, doctor, she begged, for the sake of little Charles, I want to do anything I can to make up for my husband's evil deeds, for I fear if I do not, one day Charles may have to pay for his father's crimes. What I have left in this world to call my own, only a few jewels, I would like to give the injured family, if the sister can be found. After she left, I delivered my letter to the king's court. That very night, December 31st, a man in black rang my doorbell and told my young servant, Ernest Defarge, that there was a medical emergency, that he had brought a coach to take me to the patient. Ernest summoned me, and I agreed to go. As soon as I was out of the house, the man in black tied a black muffler over my mouth and pinned my arms to my sides. The brothers Evremond ran out from a dark corner and, with a nod, identified me. One of them was holding the letter I had written to the king's court. The coach brought me here to the Bastille, to my living grave, and in all these years the brothers never found it in their hearts even to bring me news whether my dear wife was alive or dead. For this I denounced them and their heirs to the last of their race. I, Alexander Manette, unhappy prisoner, on this last night of the year 1767, do denounce them until the time when all these crimes shall be answered for. A dreadful roar arose in the courtroom when the president of the tribunal finished reading. The vote of the jury was as solidly against Charles Darnay as it had been in his favor the last time. Death by the guillotine in 24 hours. Chapter 16. A Fateful Meeting. After Sidney Carton took Lucy and Dr. Manette home from the courthouse, he left them in the care of Mr. Lorry and Miss Pross, and turned his steps toward Saint Antoine and to Ernest Defarge's wine shop. Madame Defarge served the Englishman his wine and listened to him struggling to make himself understood in French, a tongue which Sidney spoke well. Returning to the counter, she remarked to her husband how much Sidney looked like Charles Saint-Evremond. Defarge looked at Sidney, nodded to his wife, then returned to his conversation with the only other customer in the shop, Jacques III. "We must stop somewhere," Defarge said loudly, confident that his French was not understood by the Englishman at the table. "We can't stop short of execution," cried his wife. "Execution is a good thing," added Jacques. "Our enemies should be put to death." "But Dr. Manette has suffered so much already," said Defarge, "and so has his daughter." If I left it up to you, you would try to save the prisoner even now, complained Madame Defarge. But I knitted the Evrémonde family into my list a long time ago. They must all be destroyed, Lucy and the child as well. Why are you so bitter against the wife and child, Madame? Asked Jacques III. When the Bastille fell, Jacques, my husband, found that paper in the North Tower, and we read Dr. Manette's story together. My reaction was one of horror, for you see, that peasant family described in it was my family. That slain boy was my brother. That kidnapped girl dying of brain fever was my sister. Their heartbroken father was my father. I am the only surviving member of that family. And the duty to avenge the crimes of the Evrémondes, every last one, falls upon me. Other customers entered the wine shop, and the conversation stopped. Sidney had overheard enough. Now Lucy and the child were in danger as well. He had to act quickly. Leaving the shop, he headed for Mr. Lorry's room for a planned meeting at 9 o'clock with the banker and Dr. Manette. But it wasn't until the clock was striking midnight that the old doctor appeared at the door. The look on his face made it clear to Sidney and Mr. Lorry that all was lost. "I can't find it. Where is it?" cried the doctor, tearing wildly at his hair. "I must have my shoemaker's bench and tools." All was lost, utterly lost. The two men soothed the weeping doctor and assured him that he would have his tools shortly. Sidney then pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and searched through the doctor's pockets until he found a similar one. Handing them both to Mr. Lorry, he explained, "These travel papers will allow Lucy, Dr. Manette, the child, and me to leave Paris. Hold them for me until tomorrow, for I do not wish to carry them with me when I go to the prison. You and I are Englishmen, and will be able to leave Paris safely, but I have reason to believe that the travel papers for the doctor and Lucy and the child may be cancelled if we do not hurry." "Are they in danger?" asked Mr. Lorry. "In great danger, sir. Just tonight I heard Madame Defarge make plans to denounce them. But you, Mr. Lorry, can save them. I would do anything for them. Have a coach ready to leave Paris at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Tell Lucy of the danger they are in, and that for the sake of her child and her father she must go with you. Tell her this was her husband's final wish. Be in the coach with them all, and keep a place for me. As soon as I arrive, pull me inside and drive away. Just be sure you have all the papers with you so that we can all leave for England, and no matter what happens, you must not change your plans." "You are a fine man to help them this way," said Jarvis Lorry, taking Sidney's hand eagerly. "I will do as you ask." The two men then escorted the old doctor home, and afterwards Sidney stood in the darkened street looking up at Lucy's lighted window. May heaven bless you," he whispered. "Farewell, my love." While Sidney was making his plans, Charles was alone in his prison cell, writing his final letters. He reassured Lucy of his love for her and begged her to be strong for her father's sake. He asked Dr. Manette to take care of his wife and child, and he thanked Mr. Lorry for his friendship and entrusted him with his business affairs. He never thought of Sidney Carton in his final hours. The clock struck 2. In another hour, the prisoner would be dragged to a wooden cart for the ride to the guillotine. Suddenly, the key turned in the lock, and a jailer opened the door. Sidney Carton entered the cell, and Charles jumped to his feet. "I come with a request from Lucy," said Sidney. "There's no time to explain. Just take off your jacket and tie and boots, and put on mine, and give me the ribbon from your hair, and shake it out loose like mine." When Charles did not move to obey, Carton began forcing the changes on him. "Carton, this is madness," cried Charles. "Nobody can escape from here. You will only die with me." "I didn't ask you to try to escape. Just sit here and write what I tell you to," ordered Carton as he forced Charles into a chair and pushed a pen into his hands. "To whom do I address it?" asked Charles, pressing his hand to his bewildered head. "To no one," replied Sidney, and he stood behind Charles, his hand slowly creeping inside his shirt. "Now write this. If you remember the words that passed between us long ago, you will understand what I am doing." "I smell something strange in the room," said Charles, unable to see Sidney's hand slowly coming out of his shirt. I do not smell anything, said Sidney calmly. Keep on writing. I am thankful to get the chance to prove those words I said to you so long ago, that I would lay down my life for you. I do it now eagerly, and you are to have no grief, no regret. Charles' eyes became clouded, and his fingers dropped the pen. At that moment, Sidney's hand, wrapped around the cloth, soaked with the chemist's liquid, pressed hard against Charles' nose, while his other hand grabbed him around the chest. For a few seconds, Charles struggled. Then he lay unconscious on the ground at the feet of the man who had come to lay down his life for him. Sidney quickly put on Charles' clothes and tied his hair back with the ribbon. "Guard!" called Sidney, and John Barsad entered the cell. "Take my visitor out. He has become ill." Then in a whisper he added, "Carry him to his coach and take him immediately to Mr. Lorry at the place of our plans. Keep your end of the deal, Barsad, and my lips will be sealed forever." Barsad carried Charles out, and Sidney was alone. The clock struck 3, and a guard entered. "Follow me, Evrémonde," he ordered. "The guillotine awaits." Chapter 17, Fleeing the Revolution. Just before 3 that afternoon, a carriage going out of Paris stopped at the city gates. "Your travel papers," demanded a guard. The papers were passed out of the carriage, and the guard read, "Alexander Manette, doctor, French. Which passenger is he?" Jarvis Lorry pointed to a helpless, murmuring old man. "This is he." "The citizen doctor doesn't seem to be in his right mind," said the guard. "The fever of the Revolution must be too much for him. Lucy, his daughter French, the wife of Evrémonde, I believe." "She is," replied Mr. Lorry. "The same Evrémonde who has a date with the guillotine," sneered the guard. "Then there is Lucy, her child, English, and Sidney Carton, lawyer, English. Which is he?" "Here," said Mr. Lorry, pointing to an unconscious figure slumped in the corner of the carriage. "He has been in poor health and has just come from a sad parting from a friend who is in trouble with the Republic. And last, Jarvis Lorry, banker, English." "I am Jarvis Lorry. May we leave Paris now, citizen?" "Yes, here are your papers, signed and ready," said the guard. "Have a good journey." Chapter 18, Outwitting the Guillotine. As the guillotine awaited its victims that day, Madame Defarge met with Jacques II and Jacques III. She had chosen Jacques II's woodcutter's hut near the prison for the meeting, rather than the wine shop. "I am here alone," she explained to them, "because while my husband is a good Republican and a brave man, he feels sorry for the doctor. I myself care nothing for Dr. Manette, alive or dead. But the Evrémonde family must be destroyed. The wife and child must follow the husband and father to the guillotine." "What a pretty sight that would be," croaked the men, rubbing their hands in glee. "But I cannot trust my husband in this matter. If he knew of my plans, he might even warn them so they could escape. I need your help, citizen woodcutter. Will you testify in court that you saw Evrémonde's wife making signs to the prisoners from the road?" "Certainly. I saw her standing there every afternoon for months, sometimes with the child, and once even with her father. Clearly she was plotting with the prisoners against the Republic." "Will the jury go along?" she asked Jacques III, who was a member of the tribunal's jury. "You can count on the jury," he assured her. "I really cannot let the doctor go free, even for my husband's sake," added Madame Defarge. "The guillotine needs more heads. Meet me in Saint Antoine tonight, and we will denounce them all. In the meanwhile, I want to see Evrémonde's wife while she is mourning his death sentence and is full of anger against the Republic. She will surely speak of her hatred for the Revolution, and that will serve as more evidence against her at her trial. I will meet you at my usual chair at the guillotine." And with a pistol hidden in her dress and a dagger in her belt, Madame Defarge left the hut and made her way to the Manette house. Mr. Lorry had arranged for Miss Pross and Jerry Cruncher to follow them minutes later in another, smaller carriage, since the first one could only hold the 5 travelers whose escape was more urgent. Jerry had gone out to bring round the carriage, and as Miss Pross was about to leave, the door burst open and Madame Defarge stormed in. "Where is the wife of Evrémonde?" she demanded. Miss Pross moved to block the doorway to Lucy's room, knowing that the longer she kept the Frenchwoman here, the more time her dear Lucy would have to escape. "You are a hard woman," said Miss Pross. "But I am harder. I know of your evil plans, but you won't succeed." Madame peered into the 3 rooms whose doors stood open. All were empty. Then she lunged at the door Miss Pross was blocking. But the Englishwoman grabbed her round the waist, locking in the dagger hidden in her belt. Unable to struggle out of the strangling hold of the powerful woman, Madame Defarge reached into her blouse and seized the pistol. But she was not quick enough, for Miss Pross struck at it. There was a flash, then a shot, and through the smoke Miss Pross saw the body of Madame Defarge lying dead at her feet. As the coach carrying Miss Pross and Jerry left Paris, the wooden carts bringing the day's 52 prisoners arrived at the guillotine. "There is Evrémonde," shouted everyone in the crowd. "Down with all aristocrats," shouted others. Many women sat knitting as they watched and counted the heads drop from the guillotine. One of these women looked round at the empty chair near her. "Where is Teresa Defarge?" she cried. "She never misses executions, and surely not this one." Sidney Carton was number 23. As his cart rumbled toward the platform, he turned his eyes toward heaven and whispered, "I see my dear friends, for whom I am giving my life, living peaceful, useful, happy lives. I see them holding a special place for me in their hearts, remembering me with love, as no one ever did before. Yes, this is a far, far better thing that I am doing than anything I have ever done in my life. The eternal rest that I am going to will be a far, far better rest than any I have ever known." And there we have the end. And I hope you all enjoyed that. Have a good night.